Welcome to the Legally Speaking podcast. I'm your host, Rob Hanna. For this week's Minisode, we are joined by the Head of Banking and Finance and Employment at KC Partnrers, Adam North. So welcome, Adam.
Thanks for having me on, Rob. Delighted to join you.
Absolutely. So today we're obviously talking about your practice area and what the market's doing currently. Do you want to sort of just give a bit of an overview as we sit today on what things and what the market's looking like?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as you kind of quite correctly laid out there, I head up the banking and finance and employment practices at KC Partnrers. As you know, working with international law firms and boutiques in the city predominantly, but also globally, on strategic mandates within everything to do related banking and finance, kind of from asset finance all the way through to restructuring and insolvency, funds, and all of that jazz. And then I also cover the employment practice, which kind of speaks for itself, really. Everybody knows it's a very interesting time at the moment, particularly in a couple specific areas within finance and employment as well. I think the elephant in the room is that restructuring and insolvency is incredibly busy at the moment. But my view from the people I speak with, from talking to my clients and associates, is that it's busy at the moment, but due to the changes in insolvency law, they've held back the floodgates so far to speak at the moment. But I do think once we kind of resume to whatever a new normal looks like, those floodgates will open and clients and associates are expecting to get busier in the kind of coming months and so on. The majority of that has been due to changes in insolvency law in response to the COVID-19 pandemic that mean that restructuring and insolvency proceedings and mandates have been held off a little bit. Talk through them in a little bit more detail if you think that'll be worth it, Rob.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to let our listeners know a bit more of that, because it's obviously one of the most sort of discussed areas, as you say, along with employment at the moment. So I'm sure people would be keen just to know a bit more about that.
Yeah, well, I think the first is there's been a moratorium on initiating winding up proceedings within insolvency. Therefore, creditors of insolvent companies cannot initiate proceedings now to kind of bring them to court. And that's with the view of essentially that the government has taken the view that companies that were solvent and profitable pre-COVID-19 will hopefully be able to be solvent and profitable post-COVID-19. And therefore, it gives them a little bit of time to claw back, and the courts don't want to be inundated with insolvency claims, and just gives them an opportunity to kind of pick themselves up and hopefully kind of see through this pandemic that has no doubt taken a massive hit on a number of sectors within the global economy, not obviously just within the UK. And then the other element of that is a suspension of wrongful trading duties. Therefore, the directors of companies no longer have the responsibility to notify creditors that the company is insolvent. So therefore, goes along the pretext that the government's taken pre-COVID, solvent companies will be able to hopefully pick themselves back up. I think the nature of that is the key word in that is hope, in that unfortunately we're going to see a massive rise in restructuring and insolvency claims and restructuring matters post-COVID-19 as so many companies just simply won't be able to survive a serious loss of revenue, particularly kind of in the retail and obviously leisure and holiday spaces is the ones that we're going to see that are going to be really, really hard hit.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for sharing that. That's really interesting. And, the other big area which you cover, of course, is employment. So, what are sort of some of the mandates you've been working on, and what does the outlook look like for that space?
I think if you're an employment lawyer at the moment, you've probably just got your head around the furlough scheme. And that was, based on the associates I speak to, that was a bit of kind of a rush of the furlough scheme was announced, and inevitably with any kind of pieces of legislation that are rushed through, there were some loopholes, there were some gaps that they had to get their heads around. And now they're extremely busy acting predominantly on an advisory capacity to clients who are trying to understand what their responsibilities are as employers, and then also advising employees who have either been furloughed or in the process of being furloughed on what they can and can't do under the furlough scheme, and how long it will go on for, which obviously no one's really too sure about. And then unfortunately, we've had kind of some employers will be looking at taking up mass redundancies and redundancy processes in response to coronavirus. So I think if you're an employment lawyer or a restructuring lawyer, you're incredibly busy, and it may only get busier is essentially the outlook. And that seems to be the reflection in law firms who are looking at hiring talent. They're either looking at kind of bulking up in those areas or will be assessing their needs over the next few months. Just to quickly hark back to restructuring, one interesting point that I've seen my clients taking is similar to in 2008 with the global financial crash. They have been kind of transitioning junior corporate lawyers into restructuring lawyers, not necessarily permanently, but on a temporary basis, as corporate activity has taken a big hit as expected with a bit of an economic crash. The junior corporate lawyers have been drafted in at least the top of my head, there's at least 3 massive international law firms that are doing so with their London corporate practices, siphoning off the corporate talent as there's not the demand on work there. And if they've done a restructuring and insolvency seat, they're especially valuable to come in and do the initial drafting and the initial work before kind of being checked off by the actual qualified restructuring lawyers.
Right. Well, that's really interesting, Adam. Thanks so much for sort of coming on and sharing your insights around sort of, general finance, restructuring, employment. If people are interested or want to know more or want to get in touch with you, what's best for them to do?
Go on to my LinkedIn profile, which is just Adam North. Hopefully will come up towards the top, or on the Kisuncar website, which is www.kisuncar. Under people, my section is there, and you can reach me on my mobile or just on email. I'm also a big advocate of software called Calendly, where you can quite easily pop in a time into my diary just to have a slot to speak, and it means we don't have to go with the back and forth of trying to organise a good time to speak for everyone, and you do when works for you, and those slots will only come up where I am available and free. But as I said, happy to speak with anyone who's just looking for a bit of career guidance or career advice, or just wants a bit of a survey on the market and a sounding board, so to speak, for their current position.
Great stuff, Adam. Thanks so much for having you on, and I'm sure we'll see you again soon.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Rob.